Yeah, so I'm Clark Sutherland. Yeah, so I do all the Bird Cycle Works demos in Scotland. I keep a demo fleet here, usually 5 or 6 bikes in various sizes. We've always got a large AM9 because that's my bike, and a large 029 hardtail because that's also my bike. And then the other ones we just swap between myself and Bird in the northeast of England. Which I guess leads us on to I have in the last year been able to do quite a lot of really nice custom build bikes. Using the Birds, and what we have here is the bike that I built for myself, and I really wanted to showcase what can be done in terms of a fairly rigid enduro build that will take quite a lot of abuse, but also has some pretty nice parts on it and some blingy colours that I can't help but get myself attracted to as well. I went for the Aeris AM9 because for the last 18 months prior to getting this bike, I'd been riding the AM160, so it was a 650B bike, 170mm travel up front, 160 in the back, which was fantastic, but tried a couple of 29ers and my hardtail, my Bird 029, obviously it's a 29-inch wheel, and just found that it gave me a little bit more confidence. Being a slightly taller rider as well, I felt that it kind of worked for my height. Got fairly long legs and got the ability to move around a bigger wheeled bike. So yeah, when the AM9 was launched, I was already thinking, well, this is probably going to be my next bike. Had a quick shot of it, decided that was definitely the bike for me. The bike I rode was pretty basic. I only had a really small shot of it. A couple of the guys that ride with us had ridden one as well, and Jim, who I kind of trust with all things, he said his bike, he was like, oh, that's the best bike I've ever ridden, and he's like same height as me, same weight as me, rides the same stuff as me, albeit considerably faster. So yeah, decided that the AM9 was definitely going to be the bike for me. So I went for the collar shock when I built this bike. This is the standard AM9 linkage that's on this, and the shock curve is super progressive on this bike, so it works really well with the coil. There is another linkage available for people that maybe struggle to get all of the travel out of their bike, but where we ride here, I find that using all the travel isn't an issue. I had a little bit of playing back and forth with different spring rates to get it just right, and I'm settled on 375 now. Obviously every bike's very different in how the shock curve works, but for me, I tried 400 to start with, it was a little bit harsh, tried 350, it was a little bit light, so 375 seems to be perfect, and the progression on the linkage in this bike is ideal for me for the coil. It works perfectly. So yeah, you'll see on this bike that I've got the 2020 Lyric Ultimate. For me, I had a Lyric on my previous bike, really liked to feel the shock, just good rigidity to it, and you know, obviously like that's really the pinnacle of rock shocks and enduro forks, if you like. The bike's a little bit like lighter weight, and I felt for me with my weight, the sort of stuff that I was going to be riding, I wanted to just have this slightly beefier fork. It does obviously weigh a little bit more, but not a huge amount, and to be honest, you know, I could lose a little bit of weight before I'd be too worried about weight in the bike. So yeah, the Lyric for me was a no-brainer really, and I'm really happy with the way that it's set up now. It seems to do what I want it to do all the time. Yeah, super happy with the choice of the Lyric. So this bike I spec'd with the SLX crankset. It's actually marginally lighter than the XT crankset, and obviously there's a bit of a cost saving to it there as well. You know, there is a bit of a discussion about the XT being ever so slightly more rigid, but me as a Joe Blogs rider, I don't think I would ever notice the difference between a slightly stiffer set of cranks or not. I wanted kind of fit and forget parts. You know, the SLX stuff's pretty solid, pretty sturdy, and obviously it's a really good price point. I am racing this bike, things do get broken, so an SLX mech saves me 30 quid over an XT mech, because inevitably I'm going to break one at some point. I'm actually on my second mech on this bike now. I do use the XT shifter, however. I think it's really worthwhile just spending that extra little bit to have the XT shifter. It's considerably nicer and crisper in the shift, especially like first into second. Is a lot nicer on that shifter. Yeah, you'll see I've got actually got a Sunrace 11 to 51 cassette on this bike. When I got it, you'll notice that it has Hope hubs. When I got it, you couldn't get a microspline free hub with a Hope hub. So wanted to continue to use Hope hubs as I have done previously on other bikes, I opted for the Sunrace cassette. Gives you almost the same range as the XT. Cassette's marginally heavier, but again, I've built a bike that's pretty solid. I'm not massively concerned about the weight. The chain's XT as well. You're meant to get a slightly nicer, crisper shift with an XT chain over an SLX one. I don't think I'd notice the difference, but it's just one of those things. So yeah, that's why I've gone for the drivetrain the way it is. I feel it's got all the range that I need it to. Okay, not being an XT cassette or an SLX cassette, it doesn't have that 10 tooth at the bottom, but realistically, the sort of stuff that we ride here, it's more technical and gnarly. There's no real fast trail center stuff. I never find that I'm pedaling out. I've got a 32 tooth chainring on there. And yeah, the range of gears is ample for my needs. If I was building the bike now, I probably would just have the Hope hub with the microspline and like an SLX or an XT cassette, but I wouldn't spend the extra money now to change that free hub from an HG to an HG Plus, the microspline one, because at the end of the day, everything works as I need it to. And again, it's a weight thing. It maybe is marginally heavier being that Sunrace cassette over the Shimano one, but in real terms, a couple of grams here or there, it's not going to make any difference. Yeah, so like when I built the bike to start with, I was pretty keen to use the XT stuff. I think the new M80-120 brakes look really, really nice. They use the same pads as the Z's and the Saints. They've got the same stopping power. They do weigh a little bit less, but weight was never a consideration. What I really like about the new 80-120s is the bar clamp designs changed from the previous brakes. So what you'll notice on here is the clamps moved inboard on the reservoir to where it used to be, and there's now a brace against the bar right at the end of the reservoir.
Oh yeah.
So what you actually get there when you're braking is you no longer get, you used to get on the older XT brakes, you used to get a bit of flex in that lever. You don't get that at all now. It's nice and firm. So yeah, there's an obvious design improvement there. And what I will say is I'd ridden a bike with these brakes, one of Bird's demo fleet, and I was just blown away by the stopping power. I've got the old XT4 pots on my hardtail, and I've always thought they're really, really good. I mean, I rate the Shimano stuff over pretty much anything else, to be honest. There's no lies round about the fact that I'm a massive Shimano fan, and I do think that their components this year in particular are absolutely bang on. But the stopping power of these brakes just blew me away. I've got the Hope floating rotors on there too, and I think that they work really well together. The Hope rotors initially started as a bit of Bling, but I do think that they dissipate heat a little bit better, and these are actually the rotors that I took off my old bike and put onto this one because they look completely unworn. So yeah, that was the reason for the XT4 pots. I think they're a really good brake. I like the way they look, and I really like the design of the bar clamp there as well. This bike weighs, in its current guise, about 16 kilos, pretty much bang on 16 kilos. Weight for me when I built it was never even in my considerations. I like a bike to take a bit of abuse. Most of the components, that I would put on a bike, I'd say are fit and forget. Out with consumables, I like to know that I put something on a bike, I never really have to look at it again unless it physically wears out. The sort of things that we ride here, I know that lightweight rims are not going to stand up to the abuse. Like you go and when we ride at Pitficky almost every week. So for me, it had to be an EX511 rim. I'm pretty bad on wheels, or I was until I started using 511s. Not that I'm a particularly fast or hard rider, but I'm not very gracious and I'm not very light. So those two things together mean that heavy wheels definitely are your friend. I run a Exo Plus tyre on the back as well, so it's a little bit heavier than a standard Exo, but still slightly lighter than a double down. I find that on that new Exo Plus that there's meat in the right place. So this is like my winter tyre setup at the moment. So the Assegai on the back and the Shorty on the front. Obviously everywhere in the winter in Scotland can get fairly sloppy. So that's a combo that works for me. And yeah, as you say, weight's really not something that I took into consideration when I built the bike. You could maybe save a kilo building this bike with slightly lighter components, probably more. If I went for an air shock, for example, and the pikes instead, and then lighter tyres and lighter rims, would probably save 1.5 kilos. But I could quite easily lose 1.5 kilos before the bike weight came into consideration. And to be honest, let's face it, I'm never going to be looking for those podium places in cross-country races on this bike. So yeah, the weight of the bike really doesn't bother me. And obviously this bike's been built for riding all the enduro sort of trails if you want to pigeonhole it, but I mean, I can go and ride anything with it. But yeah, I mean, it's a large framed bike with 29-inch wheels. It's got 504 mil reach, so it's physically quite a long bike, Yeah, and then it's got pretty big wheels. But as I say, for me, building bikes, and when customers ask me the same things about, I mean, obviously nowadays there are so many different components that you can buy, so many different options, even when it comes to like bars, grips, whatever, you know. I'll always say that I think it's better to build a bike that you know is going to withstand quite a lot of abuse. Yeah, I mean, put something fairly heavy duty on it once, then you shouldn't ever have to look at it again. There are obviously going to be the odd occasions where you maybe break something, but I guess there's a couple of things on the bike that are kind of light, but even these Raceface 6C bars, they're carbon, they're only like 60 grams heavier than the alloy equivalent, so there's not much weight difference in it. That saddle has got titanium rails on it, and it's purely because I thought it'd be quite cool to have something titanium on my bike. That was literally the only reason. I was like, well, I'll have carbon bars because I want a bit of carbon, and I'll have titanium rails. That saddle's 40 grams lighter than the one with the non-titanium rails. So again, 40 grams, what's that? It's nothing at all. You know, it's a little bit of mud on your frame. When I built this bike, I'd seen that Bird had built a raw AM9 to take out to Sea Otter and Girona. And they'd put all of the purple Hope finishing kit on it, so the Hope hubs, they'd actually put the Hope brakes on it as well, Hope stems, heat post clamp. And I just thought that the raw and the purple looked really, really cool. My previous bike had all the purple stuff on it, and it was like a lime green colour. So I thought it was pretty cool, like quite subdued with a raw frame, like just the pure raw alloy finish frame, to have all the purple bits on it. And I decided I had to go one step a little bit further. I spoke to the guys at InvisiFrame who actually do all the prototype graphics for Bird. So when their prototype frames come in or whatever, InvisiFrame provide them with prototype graphics. They'll stick them on the bike, see how it looks and whatever. So I spoke to Nathan at InvisiFrame. I was like, I kind of want a set of AM9 decals, but I don't want them in any normal colours. I'd like them in matte purple, and I specifically said I want them to match like the Hope purple, if you like. And I think they got it pretty bang on. The gloss obviously would look a little bit closer, but I was pretty keen that I wanted to have everything on the frame itself to be matte, and then all obviously the alloy anodized components were going to be purple, so there was going to be a bit of a contrast there as well. And the frame itself, being raw alloy's got a good mix of kind of some shiny bits where like my knee rubs against here, so that's pretty polished, or like my heel rubs against the back, that's pretty polished, and then the rest of it's kind of matte. Real nice finish. So yeah, I was pretty keen on having all the purple stuff. And then Unite came out with these really cool flat pedals. They're like made in the UK, and they offer them in all the different like colours that you can get Hope stuff in. I thought, oh, that's really nice, then we'll have those in purple as well. And then yeah, the most recent addition is these brand new DMR death grips in the purple. They just came out in that colour, and I was like, well, I suppose I might as well. So they went on, and I'm not entirely sure yet if it's maybe a bit much purple. I don't know, maybe you can't have too much purple. But when One Up came out with a 210mm dropper post, I was just straight away, I need to have one of those. Like, I've got fairly long legs. You know, I previously had like 150mm reverb, so you've got it miles out the frame to start with. Yeah, I bought that 210 from Mike at 2020. There was a bit of a deal went on, and I got that 210, and it's just made a huge difference. I still run it a tiny little bit out the frame, but because it's got this upside down seat post clamp, it's real cool design. Means that the saddle gets completely out of the way, and the collar is super shallow. It's about half the depth of a RockShox collar. So if I had a reverb on there, it would still sit about the same place, and I wouldn't have the same amount of travel, even with a 200mm one. Plus the seat clamp gets the saddle down nice and low, so when you put the seat down, it feels like it's completely out of the way. It never obstructs you when you come to that real steep stuff where you maybe want to push the bike out in front of you. You know, you're never getting it caught in your shorts or whatever. And the EDC tool that it was just went on last week with my wee CO2 canister on there as well. That was actually my Christmas present from Mike at 2020. So yeah, so that's fitted on there as well. Super handy. Has all the tools pretty much that you need there. I always think it's super handy to have like a normal plastic tire lever to hand on your frame. I know there's one integrated in the tool, but I keep a tire lever in there. Inside my tube, I've got a wee CO2 head as well. And then obviously the tube there all held on with that Lowry frame strap. Does the job. So like in its guise, it kind of, you can turn up to a race without having to worry about faff with bags, whatever else. Everything's pretty much on the bike. I'll be honest, 9 times out of 10, I'll actually ride like a DMR V-twin clip pedal, and I use which uses a Shimano SPD system. But I've ridden with the Hope F20s a few times. I borrowed somebody's bike and it had Hope F20s on it, and then at the time I had DMR Volts, I think I had at the time, and the difference in grip between the F20 and the DMR, I just thought there was a lot more grip out of the DMR. The Unite pedal is a pretty similar platform. It's ever so slightly bigger. I've got a bit of a stupid leg and that my foot sits out a little bit funny on my right leg, so I need to have a fairly big platform for my foot, and which is why when I'm on the SPD pedals, I use one that's got a big platform too. So yeah, and it's nicely made. Like, they're built in the UK. They've got 4 I-distributions inside them and 2 bearings, so they should last a fair bit longer than a conventional pedal with just like 1 bush and 1 bearing or 2 bearings or whatever. So yeah, that's it really, and the purple anodizing matches the Hope stuff perfectly. So you might notice my bottle cage has got a little bit of a funny mount to it, because I run this big Super Deluxe coil shock and the shape of the frame, it doesn't lend itself particularly well to getting a bottle in there. So there's a small bottle adapter that comes with the bike from Bird, which works pretty well if you don't have a large frame. So yeah, I just took a little bit of flat bar, cut it, moved where the mounts are down a little bit, and I use this Lezyne SL, just the side loading bottle cage. It does the job. It's maybe not the prettiest solution, but it was a 5-minute in the workshop, knock up, and it was meant to be like a bit of a prototype for making something a little bit more sturdy and reliable, but I'll be honest, that's like 6 months it's been on there for now. So I did start with like an old Marin alloy bottle cage that I had, which was obviously anodized purple, so that was pretty cool. But yeah, it was starting to get a little bit wobbly and now it's cracked, so I put that Lezyne SL on there. But I've never really gone any further with making a nicer bottle cage, because to be honest, it does exactly what I need it to do. Sometimes a little bit of a faff to get the bottle back in if your hands are really cold or whatever, but you deal with it. And how often do you actually drink when you're riding? Normally it's like you get to the bottom of the trail, you have a little drink, or you do it at the top of the trail or whatever. So yeah.